Every time the world starts to feel stable, something breaks. A financial crash, a debt emergency, a sudden shock that forces governments and central banks to step in with extraordinary measures. We are told these events are unexpected, unavoidable, and caused by human error or bad luck. But here is the mystery that rarely gets asked. Why do crises keep returning in the same shape, with the same solutions and the same winners? Why does the system appear to weaken ordinary people yet emerge stronger after every disaster? What if modern crises are not failures of the system, but the very thing that keeps it alive? We are taught that the purpose of modern economics is stability. Stable prices, stable employment, stable growth. Central banks were created to smooth economic cycles, to prevent panic, and to protect societies from chaos. Governments promised that with the right policies, recessions would be mild and rare. Yet over the last century, crises have not disappeared. They have become regular, predictable, and strangely useful. Each collapse justifies more debt, more intervention, and more centralized control. Systems that truly fail collapse. Systems that grow after failure are doing something very different. Before modern financial systems, crises were brutal but short. When money was tied to physical limits like gold or silver, excess debt could not grow endlessly. Bad decisions were punished quickly. Banks failed, debts were written off, and painful corrections reset the system. Governments hated this instability because it threatened political power, so they searched for a way to manage crises instead of enduring them. This led to the rise of central banks as lenders of last resort. The original idea was simple: step in during emergencies, restore confidence, then step back. But stepping back became harder every time intervention succeeded. Each crisis expanded the role of financial authorities just a little more, and with each expansion, incentives changed. Policymakers learned something powerful: crises create consent. In normal times, people resist radical policies. In emergencies, they demand action at any cost. Wars proved this. Financial panics confirmed it. During crises, people accept debt, inflation, bailouts, and surveillance because fear narrows attention. The system discovered that instability was not just a problem to solve, but a tool to use. As debt became central to economic growth, the system quietly shifted from crisis prevention to crisis management. Debt grew faster than real production. Asset prices inflated. Financial markets became more complex and interconnected. This made the system fragile, but also extremely profitable. Agility created leverage. When leverage is high, even small shocks threaten collapse. And when collapse threatens, intervention becomes mandatory. Interest rates are cut. Money is created. Bailouts are issued. Each rescue sets a precedent. Each precedent makes the next rescue easier and larger. Crisis stops being an exception. It becomes a requirement. The logic is mechanical. Debt expands faster than real output. That expansion makes the system unstable by design. Instability produces periodic crises. Crises justify emergency intervention. Emergency intervention creates more debt and centralizes more power. That additional debt guarantees future instability. Loop closes perfectly. Breaking it would require reducing debt, allowing failure, and accepting short-term pain. No major institution is rewarded for doing that. Everyone is rewarded for postponing collapse. Eventually, the system reached a strange point where stability itself became dangerous. Long periods of calm encouraged excessive risk-taking. Investors borrowed more. Corporations leveraged themselves heavily. Governments ran permanent deficits without fear. The longer crises were delayed, the larger they became. Policymakers faced a dilemma: allow a massive correction and risk collapse, or intervene early and often, creating smaller but constant disruptions. They chose constant intervention. From that moment on, crises were no longer unexpected. They were absorbed, extended, and monetized. The fallout of this permanent emergency did not hit everyone equally. Savings lost value through inflation. Wages stagnated despite rising productivity. Housing became unaffordable. Job security disappeared. But financial markets recovered faster after every shock. Asset owners were protected. Institutions deemed too big to fail survived again and again. The system learned a brutal lesson: Crises can be used to push pain downward while preserving the structure at the top. Once that lesson is learned, it becomes policy, even if no one admits it openly. After every crisis, reforms are promised. More regulation, better oversight, stronger safeguards. Yet the core mechanism never changes. Reforms focus on symptoms, not dependency. They adjust leverage ratios but never question debt addiction. They regulate behavior without altering incentives. True reform would require allowing failure and reducing financial dominance. But failure is now considered unacceptable. So instead of eliminating crises, the system normalizes them. In recent decades, the pattern has accelerated. Crises occur closer together. Interventions are larger. Emergency measures last longer. What was once unthinkable becomes routine. Trillions are created overnight. Markets respond more to central bank signals than real economic conditions. Governments operate in permanent deficit without serious resistance. Each crisis resets expectations. Each reset expands what people consider normal. This is not instability. It is managed volatility. Those who benefit most are those closest to the points of intervention. Large financial institutions, asset holders, and entities with direct access to cheap capital. Risk is privatized during booms and socialized during busts. This is not a cinematic conspiracy. It is incentive alignment. A system that grows through rescue must always have something to rescue. The psychological impact may be the most powerful layer of all. Constant crisis keeps populations reactive. Fear shortens attention spans. Urgency suppresses debate. Complexity discourages questioning. People stop asking whether the system works and start asking how to survive the next shock. Compliance replaces consent, and compliance is far easier to maintain. The hidden system is not a single institution or secret group. It is a debt-driven financial architecture that converts instability into justification for expansion. Crises are not anomalies. They are maintenance events. Without them, debt would collapse under its own weight. Power would decentralize. Control would weaken. So crises continue, not because no one can stop them, but because stopping them would end the system as it currently exists. The signals are clear. Global debt exceeds productive capacity. Central banks intervene more frequently than ever. Markets depend on policy rather than fundamentals. Recoveries favor assets faster than people. These are not warning signs to the system. They're confirmation that it is working as designed. The first takeaway is that modern crises persist because they sustain debt-based power structures. The second is that intervention does not prevent collapse, it postpones and redistributes it. The third is that any system that requires constant emergencies cannot deliver long-term stability. Here is the warning. Systems that depend on crisis eventually face one they cannot manage. And here's the open question. What happens when the next crisis demands more control than society is willing to give? Because at that point, fear may stop working. Awareness may take its place. If this changed how you see crises, markets, and so-called emergency policies, subscribe. Because the real question is not when the next crisis comes. It is whether the system can survive without one.